I'm your host, Richard Franzi, and this is podcast episode number 1052. With the digital trends in business world, cyber attacks and threats are always lingering. Not only does it slow down operations, but also it jeopardizes your business. This is why it is crucial for business leaders of all sizes to make cybersecurity a company-wide priority. I've invited Kim Chatani to join us today. He's from Chronicle, and he's a partner there. And he's going to explain us why it's important to know what cyber risks are for your businesses. Kim, welcome to Critical Mass Radio Show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's great to have you. I've been looking forward to have you on the show since we've talked those various times at the Center Club about cybersecurity, and I've heard you speak. So let's start, Bo, for the audience that doesn't know you as well as I do. Tell us a little bit, kind of an interesting story, maybe a little bit about your professional path, how you got to the point you're in here in your career right now.
Oh, sure. I started in the Big Four, or back then Big Eight accounting firms. So I was a numbers guy.
Mm-hmm.
So as I grow up, I started looking at the numbers and see if there are any anomalies within those numbers, looking at the relationships. And I grew up, as I said, in the audit world. I soon became a young partner. And unfortunately for one of my client situations, I was looking at the financial statement, and it just did not smell right. And I think it comes from audit instinct. So the financial didn't look like, smell right. So I investigated it.
Mm-hmm.
And soon enough, we found out that it was a fraud committed by the CEO. So that's how I got into the world of forensic and forensic CPA.
Okay.
But if you think about cybersecurity, it's similar to a fraud for financial statements.
In what way?
In what way? It's silent, but it does have the similar impact as it does if somebody actually goes and steals fixed assets from a company.
Okay. And so today you're not doing audit work at Chronicle. You're an advisory partner looking at cybersecurity, which is unfortunately, it is a rapidly expanding field, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Kim, the people that listen to our show are business owners running companies with up to about $100 million in revenue. Many times these middle market companies think they're safe because it's Target and it's these other firms that get hacked. What is your experience?
Well, that may be true. Those are the stories that you read in the social media, and they go viral. The problem with cyber attacks and data breaches is that hurts the reputation. It hurts reputation of small, medium-sized companies just as much as the reputation of large companies. So what needs to get done? Some of the CEOs in middle market companies, they don't understand what a cyber risk is. So I use an analogy. For instance, take a look at a local grocery store. You will know when somebody goes in and breaks in and steals the asset or steals the cash.
Right.
Right? The windows are broken, the sirens are going, the police are there. But what happens in the cyber world is a little different. It's very quiet. Oftentimes, cyber attackers go in and they place ransomware, Trojans, all these other types of malwares, and they stay dormant for a long period of time. And what it's doing while it's staying dormant is just stealing identities, stealing intellectual properties. And you don't even know that that's happening until one day somebody notices that the company's been hacked. And it's all over the media, and one thing leads to another, and when you wind up is a hurt reputation.
I can see, and so I'm thinking like a lower middle market CEO, like when I'm channeling my inner guest, okay, my audience on this one. I can see why somebody would want to get into Equifax's database or into Target's database. There's credit card information, there's social security numbers, there's all kinds of good stuff, and there's a lot of them. A lower middle market company has a handful of customers. Many times they're B2B. The information that they have are billing addresses and things for companies. How's that valuable to a cyber attacker?
Well, it's a good question. If you take a look at the Target situation, Target was not the initial entry point. It was an HVAC, an air conditioning company, which was a lot smaller, obviously, than Target. So they went through the HVAC company
Okay.
and they stole the credentials that the HVAC company had with Target, which was a communication on an online basis. So they went in through HVAC and they swam upstream and they went into the Target accounts and they stayed dormant until they were able to exploit it. So what that means is some of the medium and small size companies, they have those connections similar to the HVAC, and that's how they go.
So
in.
if you're a CEO of a $100 million company or smaller, and you happen to be lucky enough to do business with a company like a Target or Walmart, any large retailer who collects all this other kind of information, you could be used as a gateway drug into the larger company.
Oh,
Is that what you're
absolutely.
saying?
Absolutely.
Your vulnerability to them.
Yes.
Okay. And that's I'd assume, I don't know this, you tell me, Kim, you're in the industry, there was some financial repercussions for that HVAC company.
Yes.
I'm sure Target tried to penalize them in some way for
Right.
doing this.
And the question is, though, who has the money and who has the deep pocket? And that's what they
Right.
go after.
Right.
And I know
The
that
cyber attackers.
absolutely.
Yeah, because yeah,
absolutely.
right. But Target isn't going to be happy that you, as your HVAC supplier, created all this problems for them.
Right. So for banks, for instance, who had to reissue credit cards and debit cards, they were held holding the bag in terms of millions of cost related to those reissuance.
Right.
So they went and sued Target, and they won because they were not at fault. It was Target at fault. So there's a lot of people looking for compensation back,
Okay.
and part of it is who has the deep pocket to pay for that.
I'm talking with Kim Chatani, but Kim, and I don't want to get too far down in the weeds in this one. I'm just trying to make a point to my audience that they may be at risk more than they think.
Absolutely.
Did Target pursue the HVAC company for any type of financial?
Yeah, I think
I mean, they could bankrupt
yeah,
them pretty easily.
uh,
I don't say they
absolutely,
did, but I mean,
yeah.
just the thought of it. If banks are coming after Target and Target tries to put some of this pressure on their supplier, they could bury them,
Yes.
right?
But I think the more important thing for Target is what is the lessons learned from that? Because they have other HVAC companies, other smaller vendors. How do you manage that instead of going after one small company? How do you take that lessons learned to prevent that in the future?
Right. Okay. Well, that's interesting and scary at the same time. So we're going to take our first break here. Boy, went quickly here on Critical Mass Radio Show podcast, Kim. We're just getting warmed up, and we're already halfway through the interview. We better pick it up on the second half, ladies and gentlemen. But we're going to be talking, because Kim has a lot of experience, about things that you need to know as a middle market CEO. I'm going to ask him to kind of share kind of what's the latest in things that companies are using, as well as we're going to talk about why you need to be ready, and the areas that you need to look sure that you've hardened your company for protection. So don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back after this 30-second word from me. The bottom of any page is a join our mailing list box. Simply enter your email address and hit subscribe. Like magic, you will start receiving our weekly newsletter that talks about our great guests like Kim. We don't do anything else with your email address. We simply put you in our newsletter database. which is an opt-in, opt-out, very simple system, and we get rid of your newsletter or your email so that nobody else can find it. All right, Kim, one of our audience asked me to ask you, what is it that Chronicle does? I didn't get a chance to have you tell us what your firm does.
Thank you. We are a boutique management consulting firm. We're based in California. We are incorporated in California, and like everybody else, we pay taxes to California. So really deep in California. We are made up of former Big Four partners and senior executives representing the audit field, the consulting field, and the tax field. And we provide boutique management consulting services to middle and upper middle to larger organizations. And one of the things that the way we differentiate ourselves is traditional management consulting firms have a solution and they go and consult to the clients. What we do is we turn that paradigm shift a little bit, and instead of consulting to, what we do is consult with. And so our motto is changing the way management should be consulting. And so what that means is we go in, the CEOs, they know a lot about their organization, a lot about their business. So we want to leverage that. So we bring our experience and expertise where we gained it from similar industries or other industries. And together we work hand in hand to enhance the organization's ability to get to that next level. So we work with the clients.
And are you specifically as the partner working on the cybersecurity aspect, or do you do other things and cybersecurity is just here today to talk about it with me?
I focus a lot on cybersecurity and regulatory compliance because, as you know, I'm also a board member and audit committee chair.
Yes.
So I do get involved in that aspect of it as well as the strategy aspect of it.
So let's turn back to the audience now, and I know a number of ways for small businesses to improve their cybersecurity, because this thing feels like sort of not unlike the earlier show we did here on octalkradio.net. There's so many places to get started with cybersecurity. What advice would you give to a CEO running a middle market company? Where should they focus and start?
Don't be afraid. One of the things that you want to do as a CEO is to leverage your employees, because employees are the first line of defense. So one of the things that you might want to do is to make sure that they are properly trained and that they understand what the protocols are in case there's a breach. What do they need to do? Who do they need to notify? You also want to make sure that websites and your softwares are fully updated, and you want to provide those employees with the leading practices in terms of how to prevent things.
How do you know what those are?
Well, you can call me, and I can tell
Okay.
you all about it.
Okay.
And really is to strengthen those passwords. Passwords typically gets broken in rather quickly.
Is that
And
the
we
weak
can talk-
link?
Yeah, weak link in terms
Still?
of the cyber attacks is the people. Actually, the people.
Yeah, but don't they aren't they the ones sometimes that set the passwords?
That's right. And
Like
so
password? Nobody's still doing password as their password, are they?
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. And there's
would be.
Yeah, there would be ways for you to strengthen those. And one of them is what's called two-factor authentication.
What's that?
And you probably know it when you try to log into your website to do online banking. It says, I have sent you a code to your mobile phone.
Yes.
So use that code to type in. So that's a double authentication.
Okay.
So that's called two-factor authentication. It adds another layer of protection.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. You got in this far, but you're not getting any further unless you are who you say you are, and that's one way to verify
That's
it.
correct.
Okay. But what are the tools that are this is such a huge industry that I have to imagine technology companies are building both physical devices as well as software to try to help middle market companies improve their cybersecurity.
Yeah, that's correct. For instance, a lot of companies are starting to get involved with biometrics, for instance. So biometrics is fingerprints, and sometimes you scan your retina as an identification tool, and there's technology that use touch DNA.
Okay.
So what does that mean? That means that you are using personal identification data in terms of fingerprints, touch DNA, and to protect what you call yourself a crown jewel, which is some of your IP, intellectual property, credit card information of your customers, employees, vendors, etc. So you're using some of those personal identification information to protect other personal identification information. So
Okay.
what that means is that you need to really ask yourself, am I willing to take that risk? Is that risk too high? What is that critical mass that you want to use some of those identifiers to protect other identifiers?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Another one is called EPP, and that's a technology, Endpoint Protection Platform. And that, when deployed throughout the organization, it will sit and collect information on all the employees and all the devices that that employee uses. For instance, if Joe is a salesperson, he uses his phone, mobile phone, iPad, desktop, laptop, whatever information he uses. It's basically it's a artificial intelligence tool that collects the behavior pattern of Joe and everybody else. When do they access? How do they access? What do they access? So they create a baseline of information. So if Joe goes to New York and accidentally leaves his mobile phone, and a bad actor comes in, tries to penetrate,
Right.
what happens is that incident is going to be compared against his normal activity.
Sure.
And if they spot an anomaly, the system would automatically stop, shut that access
That's interesting.
until such time that Joe can verify that was him.
I
And
just
if he can't, then
sorry to interrupt you, but I
Yeah.
just had recently Google asked me if I was in South Vietnam because someone tried to access my Google profile from South Vietnam,
it's
and I haven't been.
Yeah.
And so they immediately said that's outside your normal, you know, just wanted you to know kind of a thing.
yeah, that's correct. So it is artificial intelligence. It knows what your normal behavior is, and if it's other than that, it flags it.
Right. So we only have a few minutes left here on Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast with you, Kim. If I'm a business owner running a small company listening to this interview today, and I think, where do I start? He's given me a lot of good information, but still, what would you tell him? First thing to do.
First thing is, what is it that you need to protect? Many people panic in terms of, well, I need to protect. But the question is, what is it that is important to you? Is it your customer information? Is it your IP property? So what is that crown jewel?
Okay.
And
I would
then-
think it's your financial, your billing, your client list.
Yeah, the client list. So
money.
So now that we identify what that is, where does it reside?
Okay.
Okay. For instance, if it resides in what's called, for instance, an ERP system, which is a integrated software that contains the same data in one location. If that is the case, the good news is what? All the data is in one place, so it's easy to secure it. The bad news is if it gets penetrated,
It's all there.
it's all there.
Right.
So the other option is, well, what does your system look like? The architecture. Is it distributed, meaning are things located in different locations? So that way, at least if you're penetrated and hacked in one area,
Uh-huh.
all the other crown jewels are still safe. But the problem is they're connected. They're connected by software. They're connected with system. So when that happens, every time there's a connection, there's that potential weakest link. So
Right.
you got to balance that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah,
With
there's
all
a
these-
lot to talk about.
There is, and even my sense is, and we don't have time to talk about it today, Kim. It's unfortunately what you learn about what happens to a company after they've been breached or hacked. Those lessons can be really painful for companies because of the way the laws are structured, and we don't have time to get into that today. But suffice it to say, that can be a very daunting challenge for small companies to remediate a problem when they've been hacked.
Absolutely.
Not only get the bad actor out of their environment, but then what they're obligated to do legally to let their customer portfolio know can be very expensive. And to you, what you said in the beginning, can be very damaging to your brand.
That's correct.
Yeah, because
And
people can walk away from you if they think you're too risky to do business with, right?
Absolutely.
And you have to tell them.
You have to tell them.
So
Yeah.
it's not like they're not going to find out.
That's right.
All right. If someone wants to learn more about Chronicle, how do they find your firm online, Kim?
Well, it's chronicle.com, and Chronicle is with a KH, so it's KHRONICLE. And if you want to contact me directly,
Sure.
it's my last name, Chatani, Chatani at chronicle.com.
Spell that one more time.
Chatani at chronicle, KHRONICLE.com, or info at chronicle.com.
It's been great. I feel like we just scratched the surface.
Well, yes, it's
There's
a pretty deep topic.
There is. It's deep and scary down there, isn't it?
That's
But
right.
something ignorance is not bliss in this area.
Absolutely.
Right. And there are simple steps that companies can take to begin to harden their environment, right?
Yes.
All right. This isn't a endless process. You can take measures and get results pretty quickly
That's correct.
if you're intelligent about where you spend your money.
Yes.
And you can help them with that.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for being a friend of the program. Welcome to the Critical Mass community, Kim.
Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure to have you on the show today. I'd also like to thank our engineer, none other than Paul Roberts, and our producers, Joan Park, Crystal Nunley, Haley Stern. If you'd like to connect with me on social media, let's start with Twitter. It's CEO Peer Groups. On LinkedIn, I'm Richard Franzi, Franzi. Website, criticalmass4business.com. And until our next show, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.
You have been listening to Critical Mass Radio Show Business Talk